Hello, Alchemist. What does your shadow know about your love life that you need to know that you do not see clearly right now? If you've already chosen your doorway, check the timestamps below. If not, I'm going to give you a closer look. Doorway number 1 is the Nine of Swords. Doorway number 2, we have the High Priestess. And doorway number 3, we have the Ten of Pentacles. Choose your doorway, Alchemist, and let's begin the great work. Hello, Alchemist, and welcome to your initiation through doorway number 1. What does your shadow know about your love life that you don't know yet or that you don't see? We're going to pour some wax in just a moment, but you chose the Nine of Swords. This is sometimes called the Nightmare card. And since we're talking about shadow work, don't get yourself too freaked out about it, okay? We're going to get a little more clarity here using the Cosmic Jester Trickster deck, as well as this really awesome deck here. And as soon as the wax is nice and melted, we'll start pouring. Let's see what we can focus in on. What's hiding in your shadow? Obviously, with this card, you know, this card is a lot about being scared about something. I mean, obviously, a lot of them are about being scared about things, but it's specifically being really frightened of things that you've sort of blown out of proportion, okay? So in your shadow, which we're going to get clarity on, so far we have this feeling of anxiety that comes to you when it comes to romantic relationship situations. So it might be hard for you to trust people because of past experiences. It might be that it becomes an all-consuming feeling that kind of takes over your life, and you don't like that it does that. It might be that you have extreme anxiety around it. Let's go ahead and look at this and see if it clarifies it. Replaying the breakup, mental loops, guilt over analysis. These two cards definitely going hand in hand. When you get into a new connection, it wouldn't surprise me if you often are subconsciously, from your shadow, applying or replaying patterns from previous relationships with the worry that this one is playing out the same way. So it's kind of like you may apply logic from a past relationship to a current relationship when it does not apply, because it's what you learned, right? And that's perfectly reasonable thing to do. But sometimes when we're talking about this as a shadow situation, it can be because it's been taken to an even higher level than it needs to be, right? So it can be like caution turned into hypervigilance, or projecting onto any new partners something specific that a previous partner had done to you, when really that's just that you're interpreting their behavior through that lens, which we only know what we know. But yeah, putting those two together in your shadow, replaying the breakup in your shadow means that what happened to you in previous breakups had a level of personal trauma, or the effect of it was so intense that you're going to apply that filter to any future relationships. So let's go ahead and take a look at your first wax pour. Okay. Also, whatever you see in the wax, please tell me down below, because we all see different things. Here I see a person climbing a mountain, and I feel like that's extremely relevant to what's going on here, because when you're raised seeing unhealthy examples of relationships, which most, a lot of people in real life, can have healthy relationships, but a lot of people never see a healthy relationship in real life, first of all, when they're young. But second of all, a lot of times the toxic relationships that people do encounter when they're young are reinforced by television and movies and media and how other people talk about love. Because really, especially like in the past, and I don't know, even now, so many of the popular tropes and stuff in movies, in media, are extremely unhealthy versions of love, right? And so if you are always thinking in your shadow that love is a battlefield, as Pat Benatar says, then you're never going to be able to settle into a healthy love, because you're always going to be waiting for the other shoe to drop. So the question is, when you're in this energy, are you attracting the kind of healthy love that would be sustainable? But number two, even if that love came to you, would you be able to recognize it and hold on to it? Or would you be applying the kind of toxic or anxiety-ridden version of love onto it that you were raised with? And that doesn't make anything wrong with you at all. Obviously, we learn what we learn when we're young, and then, you know, we do what we can with that from that. Throw a few of these in here. Okay. Let's go ahead and pull a Cosmic Jester. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your magnificence. You learned that the hard way, right? You saw love in a very specific way that was reinforced by your shadow, reinforced by the way that you were raised, the kinds of relationships you saw examples of in real life and in media. For some reason, I'm just getting a lot of feeling of media. Maybe it's because of this over here, seeing the heartbreak in the movie here. Okay. So yes, sometimes when we have a low standard of love for ourselves, we let people close to us who don't really deserve to be close to us, right? And once again, whatever you see, put it down in the comments. I'm seeing like almost like a dancer right here, like twirling. So we had a mountain climbing a mountain, and then we have twirling. Okay, so the idea is to transmute the feeling of like that love is a Sisyphus thing, like, you know, where you have to drag a boulder up a mountain, into love being a sort of calm dance that brings you peace rather than anxiety. Have you ever been in a romantic relationship where you felt no anxiety, just peace, just security, just confidence in that person? If you haven't been, then your shadow is trying to speak to you and say, hey, that kind of love, I also see a bird here, that kind of love is there and it's free, and it's the only kind of love you should be accepting. Accountability continues to be mistaken for hostility. And that's why, but besides the examples you saw growing up, that is why. Because when you get into a relationship and you try to hold someone accountable for their actions, they aren't taking accountability for it themselves. So you try to hold them accountable and they blame you. So like, for example, someone might trigger you by being rude or being mean or not being kind or giving you the cold shoulder or not answering your text when you're just trying to talk about your feelings and how you feel. And they punish you for it, like you were being hostile. Then they blame you. And what that does is that builds this kind of situation in your heart and your mind over many years. Someone keeps calling the fire alarm dramatic. These all three go together, right? So basically you've been told in the past that you're being dramatic just for having regular needs. And that has built in your shadow a feeling of you having to keep making yourself smaller and smaller, and you feeling like that you have to accept the bare minimum or be alone. And you know what? Being alone is great. Being single is great. But if you want, you know, a lot of people want to have a kind of a loving love relationship in their life. But if you're with the kind of person I'm talking about, the one that triggers this in a person when they're younger or in a relationship, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to be asking for too much. You could literally be doing all the work mental, emotional, physical load, and they would still act like they were giving too much and you were not giving enough, or that when you ask for any kind of help, you're being dramatic or hostile. So your shadow knows this and wants to liberate you from this kind of you subconsciously accept this kind of pattern because it's what you know, and it's what feels, the nervous system is looking for familiarity, even if it's not necessarily the healthiest thing, right? All right, Alchemist, this is your message for today. Thank you so much for being here. Let me know what this looks like to you down below. And keep doing that shadow work. Keep up the great work. This isn't easy stuff. You are doing a great job. And I'll see you next time. Hello, Alchemist, and welcome to Initiation Through Doorway number 2. You chose the High Priestess card. And we're going to pour some wax in just a moment. Okay, so today's question is, what does your shadow know about your love life that you don't, or that you need to hear right now? So starting off with the High Priestess, it shows me that there is a hidden spiritual element to how you perceive your love life. Like you may be the kind of person who kind of believes in soulmates or twin flames, or desires an epic love story. So let's get into it just a little bit more and kind of hone in on what your shadow is trying to tell you. Oh my goodness, I'm not kidding. This was in doorway number 1. Replaying the breakup. Wow. I'm going to freak out if it comes up in doorway number 3 as well. So yeah. Okay. So this card against the High Priestess card, it's saying that you potentially are clinging to the ideas of this epic love story with a specific person. But because it's your shadow card, it's more like the epic love story in your mind, this soulmate energy, this twin flame energy, whatever this is, where you feel like it's this one person, it's actually you being in love with, it's limerence, that you're in love with the fantasy of this specific person. And then so nobody can live up to a fantasy, in the sense of when you break up with this person, if you're replaying it over and over and over again, it's going to take on a life of its own, whether that's good or bad, or because of the High Priestess here, feeling that kind of really deep spiritual energy with it. It makes me feel like there's a good chance it is that you're replaying it, and every time you replay it, it gets more and more intense. It gets more and more like you are reliving what it could have been. The most beautiful moments you remember, but the hardship, the reason maybe that you broke up, is the reason that you can't let go. And this is definitely a huge shadow, a huge thing that can happen in our shadow work, right? Because when we attach to people, a lot of times we attach really, especially if you attach really quickly, we can forget that so much of how we're attaching is actually a story we're writing in our own minds. All right, this is definitely a tree. You know, with this tree image, because it kind of reminds me of sort of a Christmas tree, but I also get the feeling of like a flag at the top instead of like a star or something. And I'm also getting the feeling of like a ship. And so I'm getting two kind of messages with this. With the tree message, it's that you thought this was rooted, you thought it was stable. And then there's the feeling of 2 ships passing in the night. But to you, it was more powerful than that. But one of the reasons it was as powerful as it was is because they didn't stick around. Whatever is influencing this shadow wound, if they had stuck around, and it would have had to come down into reality, and you wouldn't be able to keep it in this sort of spiritually elevated place or emotionally elevated place, right? And I also get the feeling, because of the idea of a Christmas tree, is that there could have been a lot of milestone or holiday sabotage, either by you or the other person, probably the other person. This is actually a really common thing that happens in kind of limerent relationships or toxic relationships, or relationships that, you know, maybe aren't as healthy for us as we want, but we may ignore it. It's a red flag. You know, we have a flag here, which is that when something good or like a milestone is meant to happen, somehow it doesn't happen, or if it does happen, it gets messed up. And so when you replay it, you might be deleting or editing out those moments that felt terrible, because that's what the shadow wants to do, especially if you truly believe in love, right? Truly believe in romantic. If you're a lover girl or a lover boy, or you know, have these ideals about love. But remembering that there are different loves, you know, agape, eros, caritas, which is the great love of God, agape, like the universal love, whether it's, you know, God or spirit, whatever you want to perceive it as. And then there's like eros, like romantic love, and caritas, which is charity. So all this love is open and available to you, but a lot of times if you're really attached to specific idea of romantic love, then you can overlook red flags. And like I said, if it is a two ships passing in the night situation, you can really build that up in your mind to epic proportions that nobody and nothing could actually live up to in real life. Alrighty, throw a few more in there. Alright, that's it. Okay, we're going to pull these Cosmic Jester cards while this wax sets. The spiritual path contains less lotus flowers than advertised. Okay. This goes along with the this reading over here, because the idea is that we're fed this idea of spirituality as this beautiful moment where peace falls upon you, and then the rest of your life is going to be freaking amazing, right? Spirituality is more of a caterpillar to butterfly situation. It is not beautiful, it's not glamorous. The caterpillar wraps in the cocoon and literally dissolves into goop before rebuilding itself, right? And so this is kind of, you know, reflecting the idea that you may have to rebuild your entire worldview around love, around romance, because you may start understanding that you were fed a certain story, and that maybe that story isn't what you dreamed it would be. And here we have a fox standing up against a peacock. So we have cleverness against pride, right? So in your shadow, some of this has to do with, okay, so remember, shadow work is always really hard. So be gentle on yourself. Nobody's insulting anybody here. There's nothing going on like that, right? Remember, we're always approaching this as gentle and sweetly as possible. That you always felt like your cleverness, that you would be able to outwit any situation that was going to hold you back from that version of love that you have painted in your mind based on what you've experienced throughout your life. Because what we experience when we're young, that becomes the blueprint or the template, right? And so sometimes it can be a matter of, I'm clever enough to get out of this, but also like being too proud to change it. And I don't mean this in a negative way at all. I mean it in like you feel like you can willpower your way to this spiritual love. Whereas, you know, I guess it's because we're taught so much that love is supposed to be easy and flow, and it is. But most of the time, the things that we're taught and that we're talking about isn't necessarily love, but a lot of times it's just patterns that are playing out in our lives from our subconscious or from our childhood wounds or different things like that. And so if that's the case and you recognize that, then you can learn to not be attached to that image, so that you can go with the flow and actually find the true way that love expresses itself through you. If someone keeps stepping on your foot, eventually you must consider that they've always known your foot was there. And normally this would be about another person, but in this case, I would say it's about this sort of inner battle you've been having with yourself for a long time. So the reconciliation of these forces within your subconscious is this battle where, like, you already know that you're being hard on yourself. You already know that you have been seeing, you know, the way that you view love might not be the healthiest way, but you keep approaching it the same way anyway because it feels like, so like if you're raised and you see love a certain way, then other things don't register on your radar. Like a healthier love might not register on your radar. And that's why this lives in the realm of shadow. The bar is so low, it is applying for mineral rights. Yes. So a lot of times in these situations, our bar becomes lower and lower. A, because we only saw low bars growing up. B, because the media is full of low bars, right? And C, because we might be with people who make us feel small for wanting anything. And obviously that's not healthy. That's not good. But it's some people do it on purpose and some people do it on accident. But manipulation is a common thing that happens in relationships when you end up kind of, you know, stuck in this shadow space around romantic love, right? So tap into your inner high priestess. Remember that the spiritual path is going to be disappointing in a lot of ways. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be awesome, but it's not going to be all lotus flowers and, you know, fireflies on a moonlit night. It is tough work because the spiritual path is a path of unlearning. It's a path of peeling back programming, peeling back the subconscious mind and the programs that are in there. It often feels like an inner fight with yourself. But you're doing the great work. This high priestess energy up against this shows me that you are doing the work even when it's not easy. So continue the great work, alchemists. Continue the shadow work, because shadow work is not easy. So you really are doing the great work, and I will see you next time. Hello, alchemists, and welcome to your initiation through doorway number 3. What does your shadow know about your love life that you don't, that you need to hear? You chose this beautiful 10 of Pentacles card. And 10 of Pentacles is really about joy, about abundance, about like happy family, stability. So we're going to get, but because we're talking about a shadow reading here, we're going to get into it a little deeper. And we're going to do a wax pour or two in just a moment. Let's go ahead and dig right into here. Let's see what is going on in your love life shadow. Doing it again. Oops. Compulsion and bad decisions. Okay. The impression that I'm getting initially is that there are certain dreams and hopes around what you've wanted your love life and future to look like, which is perfectly fine and perfectly reasonable. We all have our wants, our needs, our hopes, right? And so this is that dream, okay? But you might be continually repeating a certain pattern, right? Over and over and over again, thinking it's going to be different this time, and you're going to end up here in this kind of joyful, abundant energy. But you keep pushing the same button. You keep doing the same thing. And this is what shadow work's all about. So do not feel guilty or weird or bad about it or like you did anything wrong. The subconscious mind is what we're literally raised with certain ideas, right? And as you're looking at the wax, go ahead and tell me below what you're seeing as well. Your interpretation is just as important as mine. Here I see a nautilus shell. So that is the golden ratio or the Fibonacci sequence. This reiterates the idea, especially with the scatteredness around it, that you have a very specific image of, oh, first I need to do this thing, then I get to do that thing, and here's this milestone. And so you may have created a more rigid idea in your mind through your subconscious, through your programming growing up, of how a relationship is meant to play out, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having a trajectory. In fact, that's a really good idea. That way, when you meet people, you can make your standards and your desires and your needs clear from the beginning. But I think with this, it might be that your dream and your actions are not aligning. So even though you have this specific dream, by clinging so tightly to this dream, you may sometimes make repetitive decisions thinking it's going to bring you closer to this dream. So you might end up with the same kind of person over and over and over again. And so you might have this, and it might be because you feel like you have a certain type and you're scared to move outside of that type. And I don't mean physically or anything like that. I mean, it could be, but I'm talking about, you know, like, for example, sometimes our shadows contain broken examples of love from our childhood, right? And so then we might cling desperately to a specific image of what love should look like. And when we do that, a lot of times we narrow down. And so at the same time, we may have this vision of love, but our subconscious and our actions only have the capacity to reach towards the level of love frequency that we were used to before. And so there's a disconnect here. So then you're trying to turn maybe someone who doesn't have the capability to love you like this into someone who can love you like this, rather than healing yourself so that you can be able to more clearly identify someone who has the capacity to love like this, if that makes sense. Okay, let's go ahead and pull your first Cosmic Jester card. Some people water your garden. Others take over the entire water system just so they can give you drops at their leisure. That was probably the kind of images of love, romantic love, you kind of grew up with. You know, you might have grown up with people who really treated love in an extremely scarcity mindset. And when that happens, you grow up accepting the bare minimum, right? Thinking that you don't deserve more. And the thing about it is a lot of times you don't even realize that you are accepting breadcrumbs, or that you just feel like something's off, but you're like, oh, I'm chasing them away, so I need to make myself smaller and smaller and smaller. All right, this newly poured wax, I'm getting the image of a couple of like squid or octopi kind of swimming together. And, you know, water is emotion, water is depth. And what I like about this is that they're swimming side by side. They're not merged together. And, you know, octopi are one of the most intelligent creatures, and they're very good at shape-shifting and fitting into adapting and even changing color and looking like rocks and squeezing through teeny tiny holes or areas or whatever. And so the feeling I'm getting here is that a lot of times you have been the one to adapt and change. You have made yourself smaller. You have became the chameleon in order to get a few little drops of love. And there are certain people who will feed off of that and take advantage of it, right? And your shadow feels this and is looking for you to rise above this so that you can actually start moving towards this, really not just your dream of love, but actually identifying what real love looks like past the dream, past the limerence, right? The ancient spirits would like you to know why you are making this harder than necessary. Be gentle on yourself. The trickster deck can be a little trickstery, okay? But yes, if you're repeating the same pattern over and over again, and in your head, you always kind of know, right? You kind of know what's going on. This isn't just blindsiding you, right? When I talk about this stuff, you kind of knew this already. It might have been hard to bring it to the surface, but you already knew. And so a lot of times, well, I always say we rise to the level of our wounds. So if you have this childhood wound, you might catch glimpses of it, but it's too difficult or harder. You might not have the capacity yet to face it directly. So be gentle on yourself, but when you are ready, make sure that you don't turn your back on it, that you actually face it. Because if you keep doing the same thing, or what is it Einstein says, like the definition of it, this is attributed to him. I don't know if he really said this or not, but like the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. I am not judging. You know how many times I've done this? Redacted amount of times. That's how many times. We are just humans. So, I mean, we're divine spirits too, but we are in these human bodies. The sword of truth was not intended for self-stabbing. Yes. So, as you're moving through this, be gentle on yourself, right? Facing reality isn't meant to, facing these kinds of issues, it's not meant to be harmful for you. It's meant to identify the harm that is already being done to yourself by situation, by the past, by yourself, that maybe you were taught. There's this metaphor in Buddhism, and it says that you're born with a clear pond, and then people start pouring mud, and this is like almost like shadows, like people pour ideas and mud and gook and stuff into your pond. And then they don't have to do it forever, because eventually, because you learned that that's what you do, you just start pouring the mud into your own pond. And the spiritual awakening process is more about understanding that and stopping long enough to let that mud settle so you can start cleaning things out. A lot of people think spirituality is about adding things, but usually spirituality is about removing things that have been kind of dumped on us unceremoniously. So take good care of yourself. Find someone that you can be side to side with, not enmeshed with. That's the feeling with this, right? Someone who might be, in the past, you might have a pattern of becoming enmeshed with people, or people rushing you into situations. You want to be side by side, and you want to be adaptable, but you do not want to be a chameleon. I have a card in here somewhere in the Cosmic Jester, and it says something along the lines of like, if you are wearing a mask when somebody falls in love with you, you have to wear that mask through the whole relationship, because they fell in love with the mask, not the real you. So make sure that you're not donning a mask just to seek someone's love or just to keep someone close to you. And make sure the people you are keeping close to you are in this kind of energy, not this kind of energy. You are doing amazing shadow work. This is some of the hardest work that a person can do. So please continue the great work, alchemists, and I'll see you next time.